Hello, Realtors. We're taping September 4th. Mike will get this video broadcast after the legal conference. We had a successful legal conference. Everything went great. Reminder, hands-free laws are in South Carolina now, so make sure if you're using your phone, you've got a way to attach it to something on your dashboard so you don't get a ticket from the traffic police. Today, we got kind of an honorary member of the South Carolina Realtors legal team, Chloe Hecht. She's an attorney with the National Association of REALTORS. She helps you guys out in South Carolina a lot. She's staff liaison for the Legal Action Committee. They've given hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawsuits as we advance our legal advocacy in South Carolina. Chloe does trademark, the legal action we just talked about. She does windows to the law, the latest one, social media policy. We'll talk about that today. But today we're going to focus on trademark, copyright, some AI that she also handles. Chloe, kind of introduce yourself to the realtors, kind of your background, I guess what colleges, law schools you went to, and what you do at NER.
Yeah, hi Byron. Thanks so much for having me today. Hello everyone. My name is Chloe Hecht. I'm senior counsel for the National Association of REALTORS. I focus on NAR's trademark protection efforts, as well as other IP issues like copyright. As Byron mentioned, I also co-staff the Legal Action Committee with another NAR attorney, Mike Rohde. That's a great resource if you're not familiar with it. It's open to members and non-members along with associations. So I went to school at UW-Madison. I studied molecular biology and then pivoted and went to law school in Chicago at DePaul University College of Law. I focused on trademark and branding issues in private practice and then have really enjoyed the past over 11 years with NAR.
So, Chloe, one thing I tell on the hotline with branding is realtors want to learn their trademark rules because they're going to have sunk cost. You know, they're going to print signs, business cards, yard signs, business cards, pay somebody to design their website. So they'll have sunk cost. And they want to do it right the first time so they don't hear from you or from your legal team tell them, hey, you misused the realtor trademark. You've got to redo everything and all those costs. You just have to eat those costs. One thing that NER wants to protect their brand, their trademark. Kind of when you're talking to realtors, how do you summarize the issue that what the goal of all this is?
Yes, that's a great question. So Realtor is a trademark that NAR owns. It's what's called a collective membership mark. So that means members of a group use the trademark to indicate their membership in that group. So here, members of NAR use the Realtor trademark to indicate that they're members of NAR, which means they abide by the code of ethics. They have access to immeasurable resources from their local association, state association, and NAR. They have all these education opportunities. So that's what the Realtor trademark signifies and means. So it's a major membership benefit, right? Like this is a great thing for members. And anecdotally on the trademark team, we often hear from members that it's one of the main reasons they decided to join the Realtor family was in order to use the Realtor trademark. So given what a great membership benefit it is, NAR is very focused on protecting it and making sure it remains a benefit for the next 100 years. So that's what our trademark program is really designed to do. Because members are licensed to use the marks to indicate their membership, we are happy to help members at any point make sure that they're using the marks correctly in their business materials, their email address, their domain name. That's certainly something we are happy to do because you're right. The earlier misuses are detected, the easier they are to correct. We never like to see someone who's passed out a lot of business cards or really marketed their email address when it misuses the Realtor mark because we were legally obligated to ask members to correct those misuses. Trademark owners must police use of their mark and take action against misuses or they risk losing the trademark. So we do have to ask members to correct misuses, and we'd way rather do that before things have been distributed, before 1,000 emails have gone out. So Please, members are always welcome to reach out to us. The email address is trademark@nar.realtor, and we're happy to answer questions.
Super. So kind of like a trademark legal hotline, trademark@nar.realtor. Chloe and her team will definitely review your marketing materials. The other thing you do, Chloe, we get a lot of things on the hotline where people notice somebody that's not a realtor and they're using the trademark. You guys also enforce that vigorously, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So if you see someone who is not a member that is misusing the trademark, you can email that same email address, trademark@nar.realtor, and we'll review the information and then take the appropriate next steps. We address misuses internally. Our in-house team does that, but Byron mentioned we also have outside counsel that we loop in for assistance when we just for bandwidth issues or if we need to escalate the matter.
Super. One thing that impressed me, I remember a few years ago, you guys hired an appraisal company that appraises brands, and it was over $1 billion was the value of the brand. Is that accurate?
You know what? You're right, except it was more than a few years ago. I think that actually occurred before I joined NAR. It may have been in like 2012 or 2013. And I do believe it was appraised at over $1 billion. So that just really emphasizes what a wonderful benefit it is to members that they're able to use the Realtor brand within their business materials.
Yeah, and if it was 2012, inflation 40%, so it's probably pushing $2 billion. It's probably about the size of the lottery right now.
Yeah.
1.7 billion. So one thing that I try to help realtors, and it helps me too, because I mean, you're an expert. You went to school on trademark. You do this every day, but realtors aren't. It's not something that's top of their mind all the time. So I try to distill it down to some easy to remember things. Like one of my ways to remember it is you can use realtor in front of your name, almost like you would use Mr. or Miss or Ms. or Mrs., right? You just Realtor Byron King, Realtor Chloe Hecht. That would be an acceptable way to use the brand.
That's correct. So members are licensed to use the Realtor marks in connection with their personal name and in connection with their brokerage or their firm name. And so either way, it has to be with the name, but it can come before the name or after the name. If it comes after the name, we ask that there be separating punctuation. So often you see folks include a comma or a hyphen. So it'll be like the, John Smith, comma, Realtor, or Cloud Realty, hyphen, Realtors. But if Realtor or Realtors comes before the name, then you don't need to include that separating punctuation.
And that's mainly because what you're trying to differentiate, right? This is the way I would think of it. Like in South Carolina, there's say 50,000 real estate licensees, but our membership's about 30,000. So there's 30,000 realtor members of the association, and then there's another 20,000, and everybody's a real estate licensee, but some are not realtor members. That's the differentiation, right, that we're trying to protect.
Right. We're trying to protect member licensees from non-member licensees. So that's how members can use the marks to tell folks that, hey, I'm a member of this organization, which means I have access to all their resources and I abide by a code of ethics that demands a higher degree of professionalism than some state licensing laws.
That's where it kind of gets where, you correct me when I use this. So use the term contextual use. That's more like you're using it in a sentence, a paragraph, or a phrase, right? So kind of what's some easy to distill rules that realtors can remember? Hey, if I'm using the term realtor in a sentence or a phrase or a paragraph, some things I need to be aware of so I don't accidentally violate the trademark rules.
No, it's a great question. And so I'm going to take it a step back and I'm going to describe what we call our 3 core trademark rules. So those rules are 1, the mark should always be properly formatted. 2, descriptive language cannot be used with the marks. And 3, if you're using the marks contextually, so that's in a sentence or phrase, in writing or in verbal remarks, it has to be proper. So do you mind if I review each of those rules?
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Thank you, Chloe.
So proper formatting. That means the Realtor mark should always appear in uppercase letters with the trademark registration symbol. And the trademark registration symbol is that little R within the circle that you see next to Realtor when we're using it. Yes, exactly, Byron. That's
I was pointing to our studio sign for those that are listening on the podcast. We have South Carolina Realtors with a little registration symbol next to it. That's what I was pointing and made Chloe laugh.
And if you're like, how do I get that symbol into my thing? It's very, very easy. You could search it online, but you can just do a parentheses and then an R and then a parentheses, and at least Microsoft products will automatically format that to the trademark registration symbol. If for some reason you can't use all uppercase letters, then just capitalize Realtor, but make sure you include the trademark registration symbol. And if you can't include the trademark registration symbol, then make sure you use the mark in all uppercase letters. And this particular rule is helpful because it informs readers, viewers, that Realtor is a trademark, which means it has special significance. It's not an ordinary word. So the second core rule was no descriptive language with the Realtor marks. And what that means is that Realtors should not be modified with an adjective or other language. So for example, professional Realtor, or using South Carolina with Realtor to indicate that you're a member in that area. So South Carolina Realtors. That's improper. And the reason is because it tends to imply that maybe you're not talking about being a member of NAR, but rather a real estate professional. But also, if you think about it, Realtor only means member of the National Association of REALTORS. It's intended, just as Byron and I were just talking about, it's intended to distinguish members from non-members. But when you use descriptive language with the marks like best or a geographic descriptor or any type of language, it ends up distinguishing between members, and that's just not the purpose of the marks. The purpose of the marks are to distinguish between members of NAR and non-members of NAR.
I like that. That's an easy way to remember it. It's making differences between members. That's what I never thought of it that way. That's a way I'm going to remember it from now on. And for the realtors that are watching this, we were laughing about the R symbol here. If people say, hey, Byron and South Carolina Association of Realtors already have a trademark strike, because if you look at the sign, it says South Carolina Realtors. There's a provision in the membership marks manual online that the associations can use geography, right? So realtors can't do this, but the association can, correct?
That is absolutely correct. You're right. I should note that this in no way applies to association names. Associations are allowed to use geographic descriptors or other language with the Realtor marks, but just for the sole purpose of their name.
Now, I like the memory aid about you don't want to create divisions between members, that they're all one big group, they're all members in it. So if you use best, that means you're better than somebody else. That's differentiating. Or if you're saying Low Country or South Carolina Realtor, that's differentiating you from somebody from North Carolina or Georgia when you're all NAR members. So that's a good memory aid. Why you can't use a descriptor, because I always kind of wondered why you can't use an adjective or a descriptor, but that makes more sense to me now. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is such an important rule. It's actually embodied in NAR's bylaws. That's how important, folks creating the bylaws back in the day thought that specific rule was. So the third rule is proper contextual use, and that kind of kicked off the question that you initially posed, Byron. And proper contextual use is that if you're using the Realtor marks in a sentence or phrase, whether that's in writing or verbal remarks, that there must be a direct membership reference, a reference to membership in NAR within the same sentence or phrase. And what that does, why this is important, why this is like one of the 3 core rules, is it makes sure that readers or listeners understand that Realtor is referring to members of NAR and not the job of real estate professional. When that membership reference is omitted, it tends to sound like they're talking about the job, and we want to avoid that, certainly. So what is a membership reference? There's a group of them. What we would consider, first of all, is use of a specific association's name, whether that's NAR's, the South Carolina Realtors, a specific local association. If that name appears within the same sentence or phrase, then that supports use of the Realtor marks. Another reference is just referring to an association, alone, a local association, a state association. That's a membership reference. Another reference is referring to a specific membership activity, like a major one. For example, the example I normally give is committee participation. That is such a hallmark of membership in NAR and various local and state associations. So referencing committee participation would support use of the Realtor marks. And then finally, the Code of Ethics. That's another hallmark of membership in NAR. You join the Realtor family, you agree to abide by the Code of Ethics. So referring to the Code of Ethics supports use of the Realtor marks as well. And then there's a certain phrase you can use that helps you use the Realtor marks, and that's saying agent who is a Realtor or agent and a Realtor. For example, I'm an agent who is a Realtor, or I'm an agent and a Realtor. And we consider that a membership reference because it tells readers or listeners that being a Realtor is different from and in addition to the job of real estate professional. So as long as one of those references to membership are included in your sentence or phrase, you're welcome to use the Realtor marks. If that isn't there, then I'd ask you to think, well, am I talking about membership in NAR, or am I talking about an aspect of the job? And if you're talking about the job, then maybe it would be best to replace Realtor with the appropriate job title, like real estate professional, agent, broker, whatever that may be. And if you are trying to refer to NAR membership, then just replace the Realtor mark with member. And that whatever that is, it could, whatever member variation, it could be member of the South Carolina Realtors, NAR member, whatever variation you'd like to use, replace the Realtor marks with that. And yeah, what all these rules do is they protect and promote that very special meaning of Realtor.
Yeah, that 1 billion plus valuation is important to protect that. That number 3 rule, you kind of recently educated, because I was getting kind of lazy. I was just saying like Realtor member, and you're like, hey, Byron, you need to add a little bit more to that. You can't just say Realtor. You could say member, but when you use that Realtor, when you say Realtor member, you have to add in something about of NAR, of SCR, of CTAR, or Realtor committee member on the legal action committee, or Realtor member who follows the Code of Ethics, that sort of thing. So you have to go a little bit beyond just saying Realtor member, correct?
Yes, and well, actually, what we say is just use Realtor or member. Don't use Realtor member together, the phrase Realtor member, because it sounds like that's kind of basically like saying member, because Realtor means member of NAR. So we would say use Realtor on its own if you're able to contextually, because you have that reference to membership, or just use member then.
That's interesting. So if I'm writing a sentence and I'm not going to use member, I'm not going to say Realtor member. I'm going to say Realtor gives you great service in South Carolina. Would that comply with the rules or no?
No, it wouldn't, because I think you said a Realtor provides great services in South Carolina. So that phrase, it doesn't have one of those membership references. So there's 3 ways to correct that sentence. One is to say, okay, wait a minute, I'm actually talking about the job. So then you would say a real estate agent provides great services in South Carolina. The second way is to say, no, I'm talking about members of NAR, members of the South Carolina Realtors, but I don't have that membership reference. So then say member instead. So the sentence would become members of the South Carolina Realtors provide great services. And then the third option is to rewrite it to include that membership reference. So that might be Realtors abide by a Code of Ethics and provide great services in South Carolina.
Yeah, so say I'm a Realtor. I'm very proud of being a Realtor. So I don't want to use just real estate licensee. I want to use the $1 billion trademark, and I want to use it in a sentence. And I comply with the rules. I would say something like, Realtor, member of South Carolina Association of Realtors, and I provide great service. Would that be compliant, or is that no?
No, and that's because you're using that Realtor member language. So just think, I need to somehow reference that I'm a member in the sentence. So I just provided one way is by referencing the code of ethics. I abide by a code of ethics and I'm a realtor. Or realtors in South Carolina abide by a code of ethics and provide great services. Another way is to refer to the association.
This one's the hardest one for me because so we're trying to. I want to promote the brand Realtor, and I don't want to have a lot of extra phrasing in there that's going to confuse the consumer. So I'm trying, and I can do it by ethics, benefits, committees, activities, and membership in NAR, SCR, CTR. So say I want to compress it. So I'm going to try to put the Realtor Trademark member of NAR in there. What would be a way to phrase it that way in a sentence without being that member issue? So you could say, I'm Byron King. I'm a Realtor member of NAR, and I provide great service in the Columbia, South Carolina area. Would that be a way to copy?
Yeah, I think that one works. You could also say, I take advantage of NAR's educational opportunities as a realtor, and I provide better services because of that.
Super.
Another way is just to use that agent and a realtor language. So I'm an agent who is a realtor and I provide great services to my clients. Or I'm an agent and a realtor and I provide excellent services.
Yeah, so say I'm a realtor and I could even say licensee, right? I could say I'm a realtor and a South Carolina licensee who provides great service. That would be acceptable.
Absolutely. It can be any job title. It doesn't have to be agent. I'm a licensee and a realtor and I provide excellent services.
That's a good way to try it, because I know these realtors want to make, they're marketing people, so they want it short and pithy. So I think that may be the ticket on that one. Circling back to rule number 1 about the marks and properly formatted, there's also rules about colors, fonts, and typeface. Is that correct?
There are, and those apply to the Realtor logo. So just using the Realtor term, the Realtor trademark, that can be done without worrying about typeface or colors. You can do that in any stylization, any color. The Realtor logo does have formatting rules that must be complied with. And the reason those are important is because when it comes to protecting design trademarks, consistency is key. So if the design becomes kind of distorted or mutilated or varies across uses, that can undermine the rights in that design. So that's why these formatting rules ensure that the Realtor logo always appears the same, or basically the same, despite the fact that over 1 million members use it to show their membership in NAR. The key thing to remember, it really, if you want to sum it up for the Realtor logo, is you can use different colors. You often see NAR or other associations using it in blue and white, but that's not necessary. You can use any color. It's just the block and the Realtor term must be the same color. And that R within the block has to be the color of the background. Also, don't put the logo has to be over a solid background. It can't be over any pattern or other images. And finally, there must be an area of isolation around the logo. The area of isolation, it depends on how big the logo is that you're using. You measure half the block, and then you take that distance and you just extend it out on each side of the logo, and nothing else should come within that area of isolation.
Right. And so if realtors hire a graphic designer and they want to look, because you guys have seen this online, you guys actually have the little diagrams of how it's in your membership marks manual online. Is that kind of the source for all this information for somebody that wants to research further?
Yes, the membership marks manual. We have a membership marks manual for members. It's on our website. If you type in nar.realtor/MMM, it will take you right there. And we outline all the trademark rules, but you'll find the little diagrams describing or visualizing these logo rules within that.
And then just for the law nerds out there, that NAR actually has registered this with the federal government, right? That ultimately that's where the protection comes from if you have to sue somebody over it, right?
Yes, absolutely. So NAR owns federal trademark registrations for the Realtor marks. And those federal registrations allow us to initiate lawsuits in federal court, and they evidence NAR's rights. That's correct.
Super. And then one thing that came up recently on a hotline you were helping me with, Chloe, was the realtor was using in a domain name. What are some helpful tips when they want to use the trademark realtor in a domain name?
Yes, that is a great question, because members really want to leverage the mark within domain names, within email addresses, within usernames on social media. And NAR's trademark rules apply to each of those, but there are two exceptions, I should note. First of all, you do not have to display the Realtor marks in all uppercase letters or include the trademark registration symbol. It's impossible to include the trademark registration symbol in domain names and email addresses and usernames. And then as far as the uppercase lettering, that's just, most people just use all lowercase letters for those types of things. So you do not need to do that. And then earlier we were talking about how members need to use separating punctuation with the marks if the marks come after their name. That is not necessary either. You could use a little underscore line if you wanted to within those types of things, or a hyphen, but it's not necessary to. But otherwise the rules apply. And I think it's the best way to describe this is that when you are using the Realtor marks in a domain name, email address, or username, the Realtor marks must touch your name or your firm name. The Realtor marks may touch a functional element. So like the @ symbol, .com, www, dot, or that separating punctuation. The Realtor marks may touch those. The Realtor marks may not touch any other wording. So that would mean descriptive wording. It can't touch any other words. It can only touch your name. That doesn't mean you can't include descriptive wording. You can, just make sure it doesn't touch the Realtor marks.
Way I kind of distilled this, an easy way to stay safe with this, Chloe, is if you put your name in the middle. That seems to be a good way to do it. You have your name in the middle of your domain name, your name in the middle of your social media handle. So www dot with your name in the middle. And on each side of your name would be either the trademark or the descriptor. And you could flop those back and forth. As long as your name's in the middle, you could have the descriptor up front, your name, and then so your name is separating the descriptor and the trademark. Is that accurate?
Exactly. I think that's a great way of putting it.
And that could be, say, your Instagram handle you put your name in the middle, and then you could either have the trademark and descriptor on either side of your name. That keeps you safe most of the time, right?
That's correct. So for example, member John Smith, if you had, South Carolina, John, and then Realtor, that would be fine. Or Realtor, John, South Carolina. Both of those would be fine usernames or domain names or the beginning of an email address.
But if that descriptor touches the trademark, they're going to hear from you or your legal team, most likely. Somebody whistleblows, correct?
Yeah. We learn of misuses through a variety of ways, but if we do learn of it, we will reach out to you and ask you to correct it. And that's why I love it when members reach out to us beforehand, before creating an email address or before creating a domain name or username, to make sure it's proper. So you're not going to run into that further down the line.
Yeah, so they just get in touch with you at trademark at nar.realtor, correct? They can email trademark@nar.realtor, and you guys will, it's almost like a trademark legal hotline. They can send their materials to you, and you can say, hey, you need to change this, or it looks good, right?
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I've never referred to the trademark inbox as essentially our legal hotline for trademarks, but it is. you email us and we will get back to you. It might take a couple days, but we will.
And go straight to the source. I mean, you can always call the legal hotline at South Carolina Association of Realtors, 803-772-5206. But Chloe, you've said even some of the hotline lawyers have made mistakes. You've had to correct in other, not South Carolina, but in other states, or yet. So you would prefer they come straight to you because you're the expert, correct?
Well, it's really helpful when associations are able to support our trademark efforts to make sure members are using it properly. Hopefully they can go to their state or local associations and they can provide this information, but we're also happy. We're also very happy to help.
Super. Yeah, that's a good member benefit. Appreciate that. I was just kind of changing subjects. I was watching your When Did the Law is a series, kind of like this legal podcast, the NAR legal team. Their videos are called When Did the Law? And Chloe, you did one recently on social media we're going to post that and broadcast in our weekly newsletter. What's your kind of elevator speech why brokers should watch your social media policy? What do you talk about in your video, Chloe?
Yeah, that's such an important, because social media is so important to members' marketing efforts. So it's so helpful to make sure that you're doing it right and doing it in a way that won't get you into further issues.
Because the main thing I got it when I watched is, hey, brokers in charge, you want to create a policy and educate your associated licensees on the policy, because otherwise they're going to get you in trouble. You're going to get sued. You're going to face ethics complaints. That was what I took as the kind of the main message.
Yeah, a policy can help creating one, and making sure licensees are aware of it and are following it can be really helpful, because you might avoid several types of issues and you're putting them on a notice. You're bringing them the information that they need to be aware of these things as well. So one is just requiring compliance with federal, state, and local laws. For example, advertising laws. Your state, I'm sure, has specific advertising laws, and social media would be included under advertising. Fair housing and antitrust, those are all important areas to be aware of when you are creating and posting content to social media. The second area is copyright. So make sure you are only using content that you are authorized to use or that you own. Because posting things to social media, to advertise, that you can't use, that could result in someone reaching out to you about copyright infringement, which you certainly want to avoid. Also, keep in mind client confidentiality. So just make sure you have permission before you're posting photos of clients at their closings, or sharing details or transaction details. Also, keep in mind your obligations under the Code of Ethics. So remind folks that they need to be complying with the Code of Ethics when they're posting things to social media. And then also, you might just want to include information on how your licensees can use your branding on social media, the brokerage name, the brokerage logo, things like that, if you have certain rules that you want them to follow. But that type of policy, it'll at least put folks, it'll bring this stuff to their attention, and hopefully you can avoid some of these issues and your licensees can avoid some of these issues down the line.
Yeah, that's great info. So please watch Chloe's When Did the Law social media. It's posted on our website. It'll be in the e-newsletter. These are great When Did the Law. They're short, pithy legal videos from the different lawyers at the NAR legal team. That copyright, what we get a lot of times on the hotline, Chloe, is an agent will just, listing expires or it's drawn, and maybe the listing agent prior hired a professional photographer, took some amazing photos of the property as far as paid for them, got licensing from the photographer to use those on their MLS, and they just take those videos and use them wherever they feel like. What we found out is these professional photographers have the ability to go on the internet with basically kind of robots, and they crawl around the internet and they'll find those copyrights, and then you'll get a letter from, a lot of times the hotline, the realtor's gotten a call, or more scary, a legal letter from a law firm threatening to sue for misusing copyrighted photos. Is that something that you hear about across the country?
Yes, we do. We unfortunately do hear from members that they receive these letters and these claims. And so our guidance when it comes to copyright is if you're using content that is not your own, you're using something that you did not create, you did not take a photo of, it's someone else's photo. If you're using any third-party content, get permission in writing and save it. And that's because, well, you should have permission whenever you're using third-party content to avoid those copyright claims. You want it in writing, so you have it memorialized. You can be sure, and also that writing will tell you if there are other things you need to be aware of. For example, yes, you can use this listing photo, but only for active marketing, which should mean you need to be aware, make sure it's removed from the MLS if the listing is no longer active. And then we say save it, because if someone ever reaches out to you and says, hey, you're not supposed to be using this photo, you have evidence that shows you are allowed to use it. Because what happens under copyright law is if you're using third-party content and that third party reaches out to you and says you should not be using this, the burden is on you to prove that you're able to. The copyright owner does not have an obligation to search their licensing records to make sure to do any sort of record checking to see if maybe you were approved. Instead, the legal obligation shifts to you to prove that you had the right. So that's why it's so important to save those agreements, whether it's an agreement, terms of use, or an order or a receipt from a stock agency. Just very important to keep those as long as you're using the content, because even if you got permission, if you can't prove it, you can't really combat that claim then.
Yeah, because this thing can get very expensive, the lawsuit, because we've had on the hotline where, say, the listing agent, they hired a photographer to shoot the house, right? So these beautiful pictures of the house. And then they just went on the internet, maybe Google Images or something like that, pulled a picture of, like, say, Charleston, the famous bridge there, put in their advertising. That went in MLS, that went on IDX, VOW, went on to all the feeder sites, and it appears on the internet, thousands of times. So stock photos, Google Images, make sure you're using somebody that you have the license to use the photo, right? Is that a good rule?
Yes. And I'd also say make sure you're complying with the license terms. And I'm going to call this out specifically for images licensed under Creative Commons. So you might go to a website, it might say these images are free to use. Go right ahead under a Creative Commons license. And people see Creative Commons and they think, oh, great, I can just use this. But there are actually terms to those licenses. There's different variations of Creative Commons licenses, and most of them require attribution. So if you are using the image, but you omit that attribution that's required under the license, you'd be infringing, despite the fact that you have this license. It's because you're not complying with the license. So that's a big one. You also, Byron, you just made a great comment about how, things might be submitted to the MLS and then it's fed out to all these other sites. And that's why it's a great risk management strategy is for website owners to comply with the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. So it's called the DMCA. And what that does, it's like a liability safe harbor protection. And as long as you're complying with the DMCA, if content appears on your website that you did not post there, that a third party posted, and it infringes someone's copyright, you're protected from liability as long as you're complying with the regulation. So that would include an image that's coming through an IDX feed or some sort of feed from your MLS from a third-party listing where they included an image that they didn't have the rights to use. And we have a window to the law and other resources on nar.realtor on complying with the DMCA.
Yeah, because I remember having to do that for the South Carolina Realtors, screaltors.org website. I put myself down as the agent. I had to register with the federal government. And it basically, like you were saying, if somebody were to, somehow somebody's copyright got on our website, they're supposed to contact me, and then I can take it down, and it limits our liability somewhat. So that's a good idea for anybody that has a website, a licensee, a brokerage as well. And copyright's not just photos, right? It could be music. Say they're doing videos and they're using Beyonce or something like that in the background. That's also something that they have to be aware of as copyright, correct?
Oh, 100%. Third-party materials would include music. And you mentioned earlier, people are using software and tools. Like there's very good software out there, especially now with AI, that will find images, that will find music, on websites. Even if those are included within a video or something like that, there is software that is able to locate that content and then alert, the owner, so they can pursue that and ask you to remove it, and likely ask for a settlement demand as well.
Yeah, it kind of segues into your other specialty that you handle is kind of artificial intelligence. So a lot of realtors, they're using AI in their marketing as a kind of a force multiplier, a time saver. What are some considerations when you give these talks to realtors about artificial intelligence use? What we say is kind of treat it like an assistant that you have to check behind because it can hallucinate or make mistakes. What are some things when you're giving presentations on artificial intelligence, kind of, and use the term generative AI, maybe you kind of explain that to the members. What are the different kinds of artificial intelligence? What do you talk to realtors about when you're talking about AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So generative AI, that's the type of AI that has popped up in the last couple years, that's able to create content for users. So that's like Chat GPT, where you're going there, you're inputting a prompt and it's creating content for you. Because there's other types of AI that really have been around for decades, that folks have used in various ways, but generative AI is the more recent types that have come out in the past couple of years that will create things for you: images, writing, video, music. And it is such a wonderful tool. It really is, but it should be seen as a tool, and it should be seen as something that you cannot trust blindly, because as Byron just mentioned, these platforms, these tools, they hallucinate, and that means they create things that aren't real, or that aren't true. And I think a great example of this is the summer after really these tools were released to the public. I believe a law firm used ChatGPT to research case law. I believe it was to respond to a motion to dismiss. This law firm was representing, it was for a case where someone was suing an airline. And the case law they got back, there were case citations against airlines, like airline names, real ones were used in the case citations. Decisions were attributed to sitting judges in the district, but they were fake cases. The cases didn't actually exist. And they cited these fake cases because they didn't do their due diligence and check them in their motion to dismiss, which was filed in federal court. And the judge was pretty upset when the other side said this case law doesn't even exist. So I think that's a really good example of that. So always make sure you are checking output that to confirm that it's factually correct. I think a big way members are using the tools are to create property descriptions. So be aware, make sure that what's going in the property description is actually correct, to make sure you're complying with advertising laws, you're abiding by the code of ethics and the advertising requirements under the code of ethics, but also to make sure you're not inadvertently violating fair housing laws, because the property description might include discriminatory language. And if you didn't read through it and double check that, that could really get you into some some trouble. Some other AI related issues, copyright. That's really a big area where there's a lot of unanswered questions. So I'd like to say use AI, generative AI, for content creation ideas and not necessarily the content creation itself, or maybe for like a first draft that then you work on heavily. You know how sometimes, Byron, it's like writing that first sentence, just getting some thoughts down on a piece of paper can be a hurdle. Maybe using it for that, but then really working and editing and changing and modifying. Also, keep in mind confidentiality. Don't submit confidential data to AI platforms because most of those platforms use submissions to further train the AI tool to respond to prompts. So something that you submit could be incorporated into an output that's given to a third party further down the line.
Yeah, that's great information. The confidentiality, don't feed in your brokerage, your accounting data into that, or your personal identifying information on clients. Don't feed that into an AI. One thing that's come up with us recently, Chloe, this may be something you've heard or may not have heard, but one thing that realtors are doing with AI is they use it to generate postcards or letters, like a mass mailer. And in the letter, and they don't have it. This is all operating on its own. The AI is doing its own thing on this, like monthly, weekly. But it'll send a letter to a homeowner and say, "Hey, I noticed that your home has increased in value by," and the AI is calculating these numbers, so it'll use a real number, by $100,000 in the last 10 years. And then so the homeowner gets that letter, calls the realtor, catches them off guard because they have no idea who it is, what they're talking about. So one thing I thought of is, you want to be careful about saying "I did something" because arguably that's an ethics complaint. If you say "I did something" and you didn't do it, your AI did it, but maybe you could modify your letter to say "my systems have noticed," to protect yourself. But when you say "I did something," and then the homeowner calls you about selling and realizes you didn't notice anything that somebody else did or something, they might get upset and file an ethics complaint. So have you heard anything like that on your end? That's new for us.
I haven't heard anything like that, but that's a really good point. I mean, you want to make sure your advertising is truthful. That's really important. That's required. I don't know South Carolina state law. I'm fairly confident that's probably a regulation that the state has requiring truth in advertising. But also, like, that doesn't do, regardless of the legal issues, that certainly doesn't help your reputation either. I mean, you're trying to find new clients, and that's not the best foot to really start off on. So I think that's an important thing that members need to keep in mind as well.
Super. Yeah, that just recently has come up. And I'll kind of give you a breather, Chloe, because kind of what we do is we kind of have a little commercial break before we wrap up. We compile our legal hotlines from July. Our CFO, COO, Alan Lightly, did that in the MBR report for July. And this would be interesting for you to listen to, Chloe, but our top hotlines, I'll kind of read them in order. Forms, our standard forms are always number one. State laws, advertising that we were just talking about, other, which is kind of a catch-all, license law. We have due diligence in our contract. That's a question. And then professionalism, that's always like a top in our survey, like a bugaboo. Realtors are saying, hey, other realtors or other licensees aren't acting professionally. Agency, disclosure, compensation's a big one, especially in this new world after the settlements last year. Earnest money disputes. We've been getting a lot of questions about multiple listing service, the new clear cooperation policy, the MLS, different options for MLSs. We're still getting multiple offers, escalation clauses, the ability to be present at offer presentations to the seller. We're running our new course, the Buyer Pro course. We're offering it every Tuesday through November for free. It's not CE, but it's good to get in there. One thing I've learned in this Buyer Pro course is on the hotline, I forget you're dealing with human beings a lot of times. I'm just dealing with the law or the code of ethics. But what the Buyer Pro was talking about, Chloe, this was interesting. They're talking about this ability to be present at the presentation, for the buyer agent to be present when the offer is presented. That's something they can request. And if they're there, they were talking about you could kind of read the seller, their body language, things they might say. So just kind of humanizing. This course kind of humanizes. It gives you the ability in this new marketplace where buyer agents have to explain their value to other human beings. I think that Buyer Pro course concentrates on that. It's very helpful. So every Tuesday through November, sign up for that on our website. Broker office management, kind of what Chloe's been talking about. Have a social media policy. Educate your licensees on copyright, artificial intelligence, and the trademark. And we have that in our broker policy manual. We have little sections on each of those, but you can almost, in the SCR lawyers, I would be happy to come to your office and give training on any of those issues, either by Zoom or live. Just reach out the hotline at 803-772-5206. The Real Estate Commission's out doing audits. Their goal is to audit every brokerage, and every 3 years they would stop by your office and audit. Also, we've been getting calls. The federal government, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, is auditing your lead documents. So we've had a couple of brokers facing significant fines mainly because they're the listing agent. There was a cooperating brokerage. So in their file, they've got the lead disclosure signed by the seller, but not by the buyer. And the EPA is saying you need both. So make sure if you're cooperating that you swap forms. So the buyer agent gets the lead disclosure signed by the seller, and the listing agent has the lead disclosure signed by the buyer. That's been one of the things we've been hearing about these EPA audits. The new appraisal rules. Mike's working on a video. NAR person, Keisha Wilkinson, discussed the new appraisal rules coming out starting this fall, be running for a year, making the appraisal report easier to use in the modern age, but also the new software and new rules may mean appraisers, there's some delays just learning. And then finally, property management. So main things to think about: EPA is doing audits, make sure your lead documents are updated. For property management, which was our last hotline, the EPA is also requiring if you call somebody to remodel a house, an older house pre-1978 that might have lead in it, that worker has to have the EPA certification, but also the property manager orders the work has to have the certification. It's kind of called RRP is the acronym. And it's like a weekend course, costs about $400 or $500 to get. But if you don't have that, and EPA audits of property management, they find you're violating that, they can impose significant fines. And then kind of just wrapping up some of the hot topics. Make sure you're using your forewarn member benefit for part of your realtor safety program. But also the scams are still out there. The fake seller scams still out there. Forewarn can help you detect, find the true owner of the vacant land or even a residential property that's vacant, and find out if they're selling the house or you're dealing with a crook. The fake rental scam's still out there, so set up your Google alerts for your addresses to stop the fake rental scam. The wire fraud scam is still out there. We've got a wire fraud form. Make sure you're using that all the time. And NAR basically talked to us recently about a new crypto scam called pig butchering scam, where the realtor targets a realtor. So you'll have a client that's brags about how much money they made doing crypto deals, how their crypto systems can't fail. And they're con artists, so they're good at tricking you into investing. You might say, oh, I can afford to lose $100. I'll just see what happens. And then they have this fake website where it looks like you doubled, tripled your money. And you're like, wow, this person must be real. Let me liquidate my whole life savings and give it to them. And then they take all your money in this crypto scam. So just be aware that it's out there. If you have somebody trying to talk big about their crypto earnings and they want you to invest, just be careful. There's a thing called the pig butchering scam out there that NAR has made us aware of recently. So back to Chloe. Chloe, in closing, any kind of things that you would like, closing ideas you would like to drive home with realtors on the trademark issues?
Yeah, I just like to emphasize that please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions. If you'd like us to take a look at any of your email address, your domain name, your website, a marketing asset, we are happy to review that. We're happy to help you because we want you to be able to leverage the Realtor brand in your business materials.
I wrote that down. So to get in touch with Chloe, trademark at nar.realtor. They'll be happy to help you. And then I wrote down the membership marks manual for people that are trademark nerds. They want to learn more. I wrote down nar.realtor/MMM for membership marks manual. So nar.realtor/MMM.
Yep, it'll take you right there. And I should also note, we are coming out with a series of trademark education videos. I believe there's going to be 7, although 2 are specifically for associations' use of the trademark, but they're all under, hovering around 2 minutes or under. They address an important rule. They break it down. We provide examples. So we're hoping those become a big go-to resource for members as well.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I'll keep an eye on that. And that's something realtors, brokers could use in their sales meetings. They could show a short video like that, unlike this long video. Thanks for joining us today. It's very, very great information. You're always very helpful to us, Chloe. We appreciate it. Mike, anything we need to cover before we sign off? Thanks to Mike, Chris, for our producer, video producer. Thanks, Chloe, for joining us today. And have a great day, realtors. Thanks for tuning in.